Hi everyone, welcome to Big Hue Art. Today we are going to do a very beginner painting, focusing on aerial perspective. We're going to turn this canvas into this, a mountainscape. So here's my material list. I have a canvas that I got at Dollarama before everything was locked down. I have my water that I'm going to use to wash my brushes thoroughly in between each paint application. It's really important to have a paper towel or rag, which I do, to wipe my brushes in between or dab the excess water off of the brushes. Every time I put my brush into the water, I want to make sure that I remove the excess water onto that rag or paper towel. Really important to wash the brushes in between so that we can make sure that we don't get any mixing of paints. Too much water, too much mixing of paint is going to turn the painting gray. I have two paintbrushes and they are going to be used. One's going to be used to mix paint and one's going to be used to put the paint on the canvas. So let's get started. Let's give this a try. So I'm going to use a couple different colors. It is really important that you use your own creativity. Don't use the same colors as me, challenge yourself. I'm going to use blue and violet for the mountainscape. I want you to think of the most beautiful sunset that you've ever seen, and I want you to pick those colors for that sunset. And then you're going to have black and white as your staples to mix the colors. Again, this is your painting. You do not have to follow along in the color choices I used. I just used the simplest colors possible so that this can be the most inclusive activity for all of you to be able to do. So before we get started in actual putting the paint onto the canvas, you need to have a palette. Now I have parchment paper, but you can use an old cereal box, you can use cardboard, you can use aluminum foil, whatever you decide to use, it is fine. Just know that you're throwing it away after, so make sure it's not something that's super important. I already have white on my parchment paper, and white is gonna be my base to basically fix the values of the colors that I'm going to use. So I'm going to use the white to create a light to dark effect. I have black on my palette in case I need to make a hue a little bit darker. And then I have my violet that I'm going to start with for my mountainscapes. I'm going to start making my mountains light to dark. So remember, we're going to go from the background up through that middle ground to the foreground to create the illusion of that atmospheric aerial perspective. The very front foreground mountains, I think I'm going to do blue. Again, as I'm doing this, I'm painting on the fly. I have a kind of an idea in place, but not a definitive plan. I'm going to use yellow as the base for my sunset. Yellow is really easy to work with, and it's really easy to fix if it's too bright. So yellow is going to be my base, and then I'm going to add different colors to it. Maybe some fuchsia magenta, maybe some orange. I'm not sure yet. We'll see how this goes. All right, starting with the light source, I'm always going to use white. I'm going to white, just dab. I like to get my brushes nice and saturated and then dab them on my rag. Just, it makes me feel better. I don't know if anybody else does that, but that's how I roll. As you can see, the canvas I got at the dollar store isn't perfect, but neither am I, so it's going to work out great. So this is my light source right here. It's white. The sun in its center is white. I'm gonna add a little bit of yellow to that mix, okay? Now the great thing about this is we're layering. So there is no wrong way to do this. Just getting the paint on the canvas right now. I'm gonna come back to this sky. And you see when you touch the white with that yellow, it lightens automatically, which is great. Whenever you feel like your brush is not moving smoothly, go ahead and just wet it. Give a little dab on your rag or your paper towel. Too much water, oh, it's a mess, but it does help move the acrylic paint around. Now you always want to go with the lightest colors first. It's just easier. Obviously a yellow sky, I mean, not the most creative, but we will add those pretty colors later. So I'm just taking a little bit of white and just moving it in there. Just want to make sure that there is definitely going to be a light source. So acrylic is great to blend with, as you can see. Ta-da, that's it. That's it for the sky for now. We're gonna move into the mountains, and if you haven't had a chance to watch the tutorial on aerial perspective, I really suggest you do that before we get started here. And that's right above, and it's in the description link below. And just take a look at that so you understand the difference between the background that I'm about to start, the middle ground, and the foreground, which will be the darkest. All right, so we're gonna mix as we go so that the paint doesn't dry. If you mix it all ahead of time, the paint's gonna dry. It's not going to be as easy to use. So I'm just gonna take a little brush here. I'm gonna dab it. I'm gonna take a little bit of violet, and I'm going to take a lot of white. My white is kind of dry right now. She's kind of angry. I'm gonna add to that. All right. Okay. It's a nice mauve color for that back hill or mountain that you're planning on doing. Okay, I'm never ever going to take the paintbrush that I just mixed with and then go on to the canvas, because I don't know if you can see that, but when you use a paintbrush to mix, it's gonna suck up all those colors. Not super fun. So I'm gonna put that back in there. Now my plan is, and this again could change as we go, my plan is to add some mist to these mountains as we go. We'll see what happens. For those of you that know me, you know that I like to create on the fly, so no plan is a good plan. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start my base layer. I have a big brush. You can use a little brush. I'm just using what I have. COVID hasn't been super friendly for craft supplies, so I'm already out of paint, so I got to mix some more, and that's part of that process of creating, is that you just got to be able to take a little bit and mix on the fly. So again, a little bit of violet, a little bit of white. You want to add the violet to the white. It just works better. Now I just did one of those oopsies where I mixed with the brush that I want to paint with. A little shovel of white, Take that white, put some violet in there, mix it, mix it, mix it. I'm gonna look, it looks pretty close. Maybe take a little bit more. Okay, put that guy back, oh, put that guy back in there. Now you could have started your landscape a lot higher than I did. I just really love sunsets, so I really want to focus on that later. So I can go all the way down, get all that paint on the canvas. The layers are great. I'm going to wrap it around the canvas a little bit here. Okay. Again, mixy mixy. Here we go. Take my mixing brush. I'm going to, I don't know what happened there. Do a little shovel, shovel. Do a little shovel. And we're just going to mix it up. A lot darker than the last one, right? And that's what you want for that middle ground. Just gonna wet my brush, give it a little dab. Start right here. Or you can tell my brush is a little bit dry. So there's a clear distinction between the two layers. Starting lighter to darker is easier. Brush goes back in. I'm gonna get my mixer back out. And feel free to change your water at any time. All right, we're moving into the foreground. Layer 1 of the background and middle ground are complete. And I'm just going to put one more layer of violet on the canvas. And then we'll move right into that foreground. I'm going to change the color of the foreground to a bluish violet color. So a little mixing will be involved in that. Remember, we want to make sure that there is a clear difference in between the layers from the background to the foreground to show that perspective. And just remember, as I'm going along on this tutorial, if I'm going too fast, pause the tutorial, finish your layers, and then restart the tutorial. All right, I'm taking my violet and blue and I'm going to mix them together. This is going to help create my mountainscape in the front of the picture, which we call the foreground. You can just continue with violet. You could add a little black to the violet to make it darker. I just want to really display that clear difference between the front of the canvas and the very back when we're talking about aerial perspective. All right, I'm going to start my mountain. Now you can do a couple different things here. I'm just doing the very entry-level mountainscape, but if you wanted to do a forest scene at this point, just do a zigzag pattern up and down. I'm just putting the mountain in here. I think I'm going to add foliage as I go, but I want to show that difference between the front and back. As I'm doing it, I'm using a larger brush to get the paint onto the canvas. And just with acrylic paint, it's really important to understand that you're probably going to have to put several layers on. Let layer one dry and then add an additional layer, just depending on the paint that you have. Any low viscosity paint is going to take a couple layers. Just going to put a little violet into the bottom so we know that it is all coinciding together. Nice balance of the hues are present. Now if you've gotten to this point and you said to yourself, hey, this is as good as you're going to get, I have my clear difference between aerial perspective and my background, my middle ground, and my foreground, and this is as good as I'm going to get, this is my first painting, then you are done. You do not have to continue. But if you want to challenge yourself and you want to add a few additional details, then keep going, stay with me, and we're going to keep adding to this painting. So as I mentioned, acrylic paint takes layers to make it look fluid. So I'm just going to mix my lightest violet right now. Putting a little white into that canvas just to blend those colors a little bit. Eventually these layers are going to have an additional coating. And white is a great base layer. It really does help the paint stay intact, stick to the painting well. Helps with the blending. You can see 3 separate layers right now. Now let's go ahead and put a little bit more detail into those layers by adding an additional coat just so it doesn't look streaky and they're all pronounced and defined. I'm just adding a little bit more violet. I've run out. And taking the time to mix my lightest coat again. So mostly white, a little bit of violet added to that. As you can see as I go, my palette gets messy. I probably should be a little bit more organized, but if you saw any of my large paintings, you'd see that my palette is complete chaos after. And that's just part of the process. So I have a smaller brush here, and I'm going to go ahead and put that additional layer onto the canvas. Don't worry about having perfectly straight lines, there's no such thing. And the more textured waves you have into this landscape, the more realistic it's going to look. As you can see, that extra layer really does make a big difference. And the paint really does go on a lot smoother the second time around, especially with the dollar store canvases. They're really rough to work with to put the paint on. The paint likes to absorb into those canvases kind of like a sponge. So that additional layer is really going to make a big difference on your painting. Just adding a little bit of white into the corners and blending it upward into the light violet. It gives it a little bit of balance, a little bit of a misty look to it. All right. So realistically, if I'm not putting any trees in the background, because it is a beginner painting, that would be my second layer of the background. Just taking a moment to mix the colors for the middle ground. Just try to remember how much paint you used. They don't have to be a perfect pairing, so your middle ground, if you try to match the paint, it's not going to be perfect. As long as you know that there's a clear difference between the background and the middle ground and the foreground, and you can see that, you've done your part. Put a little more purple in the mix. See how we're doing there? Not even close. There we go. I'm gonna borrow it from this brush, put him back in the water. Go ahead and put that second layer on. That second layer makes all the difference. That's the thing about acrylic. It's all about the layering. Now again, I want that white to come through. So Whenever that brush is not doing what it's supposed to, give it a dip in the water. Especially with the weather change, if you have your air on, it really does suck up the moisture in that paint. Okay, I'm gonna go to white now. I'm gonna go borrow some. I just want a contrast here. I got paint on my brush from the purple moments ago. So I'm gonna go ahead and just borrow. And it's just gonna blend. Pour on a little bit of white. Nice rhythmic movements so that that paint is being moved around and not getting stuck anywhere. Like right there, see how it's stuck? I'm just gonna put a little bit more water into my brush. And then it's not stuck anymore. All right, we got a darker color here, a little bit more purple. And if you're a big artsy person and I'm saying purple and it's making you angry, I'm sorry, but that's how we're rolling today. We're not using violet, or we can use it interchangeably. No rules today, just painting. So I'm taking that, I'm just completing this layer here. Just fixing that sharp line. I don't want any sharp lines on my painting. A little bit of blend. Taking that purple, gonna go over here, do the same thing. And then just a little bit of white, not too much, just a little bit. And I'm going to do a little blend. Okay. All right, details here. I'm going to do one more layer of blue, move into the sky. If you like it at that point and you're done, fantastic. You have accomplished that aerial perspective that we're focusing on. I just like to add and add and add as I go. Put a little bit of water next to my blue because it's been sitting there hanging out for a while, so it's not moving too great.
Now the second layer really makes a big difference. Again, acrylic is all about layering. It's quite remarkable what another layer is going to do to your painting if you stick with it. That saying, patience is a virtue, really does show when it comes to painting. And when instead of wasting paint, I'm just putting more on the canvas. As I said, acrylic like layers, more is more. It just helps make that painting pop. Take a little purple now. My canvas is starting to get a little crazy. A little water, a little purple. I don't like to waste paint, so I'm going to find a way to use as much as possible. Don't like leaving anything on my palette. So I'll take the water and I'll scoop it all. And what you get is what you get from that. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to wash my brushes. I'm going to add more water, some clean water. I don't know if you can see my goopy blue. And then I'm going to go into the sky and I'm going to get that all magically transformed and then come back into the foreground. If you're like, hey, this is as good as you're going to get, this is my aerial perspective. I've shown my atmospheric perspective by going from light to dark, and you feel accomplished, you are done. If you want to add more, then you stay with me. All right, my palette's a little messy, but you're watching this process in action. I'm messy when I paint. I wish I could be organized. Not really, I don't really wish that. But I'm just gonna do the sky. And this is my favorite part. I'm gonna add some, that was a deep magenta, which is another name for pink. I'm gonna put just a smidge of orange in there at the top. Okay. And then I'm gonna add some more white to the, add some more white. Perfect. Got the yellow still. Do we want red? Do we want pink? I don't know. We'll see how this goes. Okay, so, gonna wet my brush. Now there's no mixing in this. The mixing is done on the canvas, which is super fun. So again, I'm gonna go with my light source. Again, it's white. It's right here. And it's nice because I can take a second just to clean up this little area. It's a little messy. Just get some paint there. And I think I'm gonna put some, just a little bit of magenta on my brush, see what happens. Very pretty. Now, it depends on what your sky, what your vision is for your sky. Do you want it calm and soothing? Do you want it a little bit more mysterious? Like a storm is coming. If you want a little bit more mysterious with the storm, put some red here instead of the magenta. No wrong way of doing it, which is the fun of the adventure. I'm going to be adding more yellow to this, so I know that you're seeing it peeking through. It's perfect. Now let's get some orange in the mix. Now look at that contrast. That is pretty. I always like to add more yellow. Yellow's my friend. So there's no wrong way to make a beautiful sky. Pick your favorite colors, mix them together. I like orange, I like yellow. I'm debating on the red, I don't know. I need some more yellow. More yellow. Put it by its best friend. Orange. Alright, I'm gonna wet my brush. I'm gonna get some white helping out with the blending now. Right here. We're just going to work our way up. I want to put some yellow on each side. Oops. And apparently some magenta too. Okay. This is a great teachable moment. You don't like something on your paint or on your canvas, you just grab it with a brush and say, see you later. And it's gone. And that's what happens when you have a messy palette, which you'll always have if you do painting tutorials with me. Okay, back to the yellow. Mixing that up. Some more white. All right, we're at a crossroads here. I don't know, I think I should go for it. Put a little bit more of that pink in the mix. Right there, right there. Yeah. No wrong way of doing it. Just nice light strokes to move that paint. As you can see, there is a little bit of an outline of the sun without actually doing the standard circle. We're putting that in the mix. All right. If you think that that is the best you can do and you're happy with that, then you get to stop here. I'm going to keep going. And just a little bit more yellow to the sky, and I'm going to come back to that foreground. And probably back to the sky. I don't know, I just like painting, so. Okay. I don't like super sharp lines, so I like to add layers as we go. The more layers you add, the more texture, the more tone you're going to have to the painting, the more professional it's going to look. This is just a fun painting tutorial. We're not going to get into that today. We are going to try to get the brush into the water though. Okay. So I have black, I have blue. I want to do something here. Maybe a tree. Maybe a tree. Let's see here. All right, so my black. Now this is the make or break moment. I'm going to go ahead and paint a tree. It may look good, it may look bad. Regardless, I have to accept it. So I'm gonna go here and just do maybe right here, just like that. Hey tree. Now I have a fan brush that I like to use for my trees, but I'm assuming that you don't have one. So with that being said, I'm taking this brush and I'm gonna go ahead and adapt to that. We're in Canada, so we're going to go ahead and get the hardy tree in the mix here. And I'm just gonna do feather strokes on the outward motion. Okay, feather strokes, a little bit of water, a little bit of black. I'm gonna go opposite side, do the same thing. Now again, this is a layering, so I'm gonna have to put some more layers of black in this as I go. But for now, I'm just gonna figure out where I want this tree to be. Great thing is you're going to have your layers of different perspective poking out of the back. So you want to hide those. Just do little points of detail here, a little bit more texture. Now, I can't just have one tree. He'll be lonely. It's not going to work. We're going to have more than one tree. And what you're going to end up seeing is, like, if you ever got to see the Niagara Escarpment, you just see the layers of that forest in front of you, and then just so many vantage points from that. A little too much water on that one. as I work my way down, there's gonna be some here, there's gonna be some here. We're gonna work our way down until it is just tree line. I'll go ahead and just put that here. I think I'm gonna get real crazy and balance this out with trees on the other side too. I know, this is part of the process as I go. If you have a plan and then you change the plan as you go, that's just the typical creative process. No need to worry. I initially was just gonna do the mountainscape, but I just, gotta give the trees some love. This black is tricky because it needs lots of layers. It likes to absorb into the canvas. But just part of the process. Okay. These nice little back and forth movements. It's just going to give it that much more texture in your treescape. This guy won't be up as high, but I do want him in the foreground. Just nice little movements of the brush. Let the brush do the work. And brushes are a lot more fun, but this is also a great way to do it. side we want it to look a little more sparse. A little more like Charlie Brown Christmas tree. Let that blue pop out in the back. Give the illusion of we don't know if this is the top of the tree, the middle of the tree. So in the front we can see more detail, and as we go in the back there's less visual representation of the forest. All right, so anytime I use black, right away when I'm done with it, I go and I wash my brushes. Black is the sponge of all colors. It likes to absorb it all. So when I feel like I am done with the black, I'm definitely gonna go and wash my brushes. If you're here and you're like, hey, this is as good as you're gonna get from me, you're done. I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna clean up these edges, I'm gonna add to my sky. All right, I got my paper towel. You can use a paintbrush, you can just rip a piece of paper towel off. I like using a sponge. Me and sponge are friends, but I'm gonna assume that sponges aren't super essential right now. I don't know. Okay, and I'm just gonna add to it. I find that the blue is super abrasive. It's like really there, sticking out at you. So a little water, a little blue, a little dab in. Now, that's an example of the texture. If you're like, listen, I'm not a paper towel specialist, that's great. You can just go back and you can use your brush and you can bring texture in by different movements. So I'm just gonna show you that in a second once I just move this around. So it's important to know that you can do different techniques and still come out with the same result. If you are like me and you just like to play around with it and you want to do a different layer, that's fun too. If you have an idea for another painting tutorial, just leave it in the comments below. I really just do this to help my students. And I love painting as a family as well. So as I'm painting, I got the tribe doing the same thing with me. Shockingly not bickering, because they know that this is not just for them. Now these are those extra details that I want to put in that you do not have to do, but let me vanish our blinds, so we're gonna get the effect of trees here as well. Just those little movements. Now this here, I don't know about it. I would like to put another base layer tree here. You're probably saying, Miss, I'm tired. Finish it up already. Whenever you feel like you have gone as far as you can go, you are done. Right here, there should be something. So nothing super pronounced. I just want to level up that layer right there. I'm gonna add some mist. Just a teeny bits of whites to my blue. Just adding my mist. All right, well, this is it. Quick, easy, maybe not so quick, but super easy tutorial on aerial perspective. Thank you guys for watching. If there is something that you would like to do together as a real-time tutorial, please leave it in the comments below and I will get that to you guys. Thanks so much.